Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday. We did not have our show today, but I wanted to do a little summary for what I saw happening this week. This is a great week to make sure I do a summary. It was the best week of the year. Today, the market was up about 0.4%, but for the week, we were up 4.66%. We haven't actually done that well since last November. First part of November, we were up 5% in that week. It ended up being up 8.9% for the whole month. And again, I don't see why something like that can't happen again with this type of momentum, at least, by the end of the year, what have you. Because, the money was being held back prior to the election, like we talked about. We saw some softness. Market held in there okay. But once the election happens, that, there's some certainty, especially once the election happens, it's not contested. There was some concerns about that. Money just started flowing back in. And so, I had people probably shorting the market in case, something went wrong with the election itself. They get blown out right away. They're buying back the stock, which makes the market go up. And then all of a sudden, people are starting to jump in. And slowly but surely, the retail investor realizes what's going on and they start to come in, which is why it could keep going next week also. I think one of the things that's really cool that happened today is we got above 6,000 on the S&P 500 today for a little while. We ended up at 59.95. That's kind of a big number to try to jump through. That'll probably take a little bit, but it was very interesting to see it go through today, just straight through basically. And it did retreat, but I suspect that we'll get above it fairly quickly. It won't take as long as some of the others, again, because we're in such a high momentum category right now. So if you look, of course, we had the election this week, and then we also had the Federal Reserve the next day lowering rates by a quarter of a percent. We even had Chairman Powell saying that I can't be fired, which I think Wall Street likes, just to keep some stability there at the Fed as far as that goes. So, we'll continue to see how that plays out as far as that goes. So if you look at what's going on, with the election, there's some pros and cons to the platform that Trump ran on. For example, tariffs and mass deportation of immigrants could be seen as inflationary, where at the same time, possible, deregulation and lowering of taxes. Although those could also be inflationary, but they could also be stimulative to, the overall economy. So, we'll see how this plays out. And one thing that the market seems to be doing right now is just working on what we have right now. Because what can you really do versus what you say you can do on the campaign trail can be quite different. And you can want to do something and either have to get congressional approval, or you can want to do something and the markets start to fall apart, and so you start to then reassess what you do. We'll see how this plays out, but for the moment, the market's in a really good spot. Again, I keep talking about this. We don't have a big IPO market right now, and that's really important because what that means is that there's not a lot of new shares coming on the market. And, stock market's like anything else, is supply and demand. So you got a big rush of money coming in. And then we actually have companies buying back their shares. So they're physically shrinking the number of shares that are out there on the market. That dynamic, raising, the demand and lowering the supply, is how you get a rocket market like we're getting now. So companies are buying back $6 billion a day of their own shares here in November. So that's a big number. There's a lot of shares coming off. Now, maybe sometime next year we start to get an IPO market. We'll see some different things along those lines. That's what happened at the end of 21. Had a lot of new shares coming on. It's what happened at the end of 2000 and all these big bubbles that finally burst. There was a lot of new shares coming on, and that can kind of cause a strain on the market. That is not happening right now. And I suspect it'll be quite a while before that IPO market really gets going. There is a lot of pent up demand to do IPOs because we haven't had any really substantive IPOs go off and since the end of 21. And there's a lot of companies out there, private equity companies that have purchased, companies that want to go out on the IPO to get their money back for that purchase. And so it's probably pretty line of that. It's one of the reasons we're seeing the banks do well, because there's some expectation for mergers and acquisitions and IPOs to happening. And so these big banks, the investment banking side of their business could do quite well going forward as far as that goes. So it was a really fantastic week. There's a lot of stuff that went on. It was really crazy. We have all of these pieces coming in, and the market went up every day of the week. And again, we almost got to 6,000. It's likely that we'll probably get through that even as early as next week as far as that goes. So most common question that was asked during our strategy sessions with clients was, what do you think is going to happen to the market after the election? And we kept saying, if you look at the past elections, the market goes up. Matter of fact, if you look at all the way back to 1928, 62.5% of the time, the market was positive by the end of the year compared to where it was, on election day. And so, the odds are with us that we could have, an upward motion. It doesn't really seem to matter who wins, which side, as far as that goes. It is just a pent up demand for money that was held out of the market, in my opinion, prior to the election that then kind of comes flooding in once there's some certainty about, how that election has played out. There'll be some money moving towards certain bets based on who won. But for the most part, you see this, money come in just as sort of a relief rally. It's over. There's certainty now about who's where. The House is actually still up for grabs, so there's some uncertainty there probably also. But nonetheless, we've got a situation that is fairly well known altogether. And so that's what's happened this week. I'm really glad that you were able to tune in and listen to me about this. Again, it was a really good week. It was a good week to be an investor. We saw some things really moving. Technology did quite well this week, I think, which is interesting too. So look forward to seeing what's going to happen next week. We'll talk to you on Monday. Thank you.